Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another East Oaks Live broadcast. We're super excited to be here. I'm Michael Klein. Before I introduce my guest here, I just want to welcome everybody. We're going to be chatting for about a half hour to 45 minutes, and we encourage you to submit your questions. This is a wonderful opportunity to get access to renowned artists and incredible talent, so definitely take advantage of that. I'm up the crew is up in Duluth, Minnesota, at the Great Lakes Academy of Fine Art, and Jeffrey T. Larson is the founder of this location. It's a school that has just gotten started about 2 years ago.
Correct, yeah.
And so you can say hi to everybody. And
hello.
Yeah. So Jeffrey has been a friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. I've gone back to when I went to your show, it was like 2001.
I remember having conversations with you when you were a student in Minneapolis.
Great.
You'd call and we'd chat.
Excellent. So it's been a while. So this was really fun because this week I was up here teaching a workshop, and it was the first time that we really got to do some shop talk and get into the techniques and thinking about the different kinds of techniques. And so we both come from different backgrounds. Essentially, I studied in somewhat the same lineage as you have, and so it'll be fun to kind of get into that. But first, I'd like you to just give kind of a description of the school, tell the audience what your passion is, what you want to do with this place, and kind of the hopes that you have with it.
Sure, yeah, no, thanks. And it's just been great having you guys here, and Michael's workshop, of course, was an instant sellout, and everybody was just thrilled with the information they got. And as he mentioned, it was very interesting for me to sit and watch how he solves the problems of picture making, and we've just had some great conversations about that back and forth. The school itself, my history is I studied with Richard Lack at Atelier Lack from 1980 to 1984, which was a fantastic opportunity for me. I helped open a school, the Atelier Le Sourd, and taught there for 2 years, and then decided to really focus on my own career, and did that for the next 25 years. In the meantime, we had children, and our eldest, Brock, then realized that he wanted to be a fine artist also. He studied at the Atelier. I would go down and teach once a month, just to be part of his life and to kind of be part of the education of it. And it was through there we both really started talking about the benefits of teaching, having to verbalize. Second, how much we were grateful for the education we had and then now shared, and just the dream, the idea kind of bloomed where we wanted to open a school and co-found a school together and run it together, and so that was the genesis of this.
That's excellent, and it's taken quite a bit of work. You were fortunate to stumble upon the building. It's an old church, obviously, but the history behind it dates back. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was. Initially we thought we'd just open we'll rent a little space and have a few students. But us being us, thought no, let's go for it. And came across this church somewhat accidentally. Built at the turn of the century. It's up on Goat Hill, as they call it. It was in the part of Little Italy. So it's this beautiful hand-hewn stone church that just happened to be 40 by 100, 2 floors, tall ceilings, north light. Exactly what we were looking for. And so yeah, we purchased it, and it was in major disrepair. It had been sitting empty for 3 years with no heat or power. And so the next 18 months was pretty much remodeling with a full crew here. 24/7, but it took a lot, and so we're really thrilled to be on this end of it. It's a 4-year curriculum. We have it's based on a blend of what I learned studying with Richard Lack, which is an academic program that descends through the Boston School. So it's it's impressionistic based, or a blending of the two. it's taken in my interest and the knowledge I've gained and learned since then, and what we're trying to do also is bring in a better balance of the academic than maybe the atelier system had. So it's a four-year program, and we're 2 years into it now.
That's great. One thing I forgot to mention is the huge reason why we're up here is the production of your new still life video. So that was also that led to the conversations that we've been having, because you got to watch me paint for the first time, and I got to watch you demo for the first time. So that was really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that more than just about anything, where you know, multiple ways to skin a cat, and yet the dichotomy between us is one that goes all the way back to, well, it goes back as far as classicism and romanticism, and even beyond that, Titian and who was his, anyway. Yeah. But anyway, it was, so with Michael's background from Grand Central and the form-based way to create a painting and work your way through translating nature onto canvas, based on more my tradition of in the Boston school of doing it optically through masses and values and color, and you know, we end up oftentimes at similar points, but with the emphasis is just enough where it's fascinating because we get there from completely different ways, and we each take into account what the other one's thinking about a little bit. It's this really interesting world that we kind of stumbled on. How Michael, you're probably as much as anybody beginning in this type of training that I had, and then really diving into the Grand Central. You have probably a better sense of the two worlds, and
yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, they really are two different mindsets and how to approach kind of what we're looking at, but at the same time, the importance of really using a technique that is suitable to what you really want to go after. So what I realized this week was that by loosening up and making the extremes of the color, it allows you to pursue a different path than just the limited kind of idea of creating a world in this context of just form. Or obviously they include color, but it's like taking it to a different level, or as in the video, Jeffrey was often referring to kind of like different paths that we can take through the forest, and I think that that's a good example. Is you can go, given if it's suited to you, you can go one way, that's something that you want to express with color, or you can go a different way that's more form-based. So
yeah, I think ideally an artist, especially if they have multiple interests or aspects, subject matter they want to go into, it behooves them to be well versed in both, because you know, in my mind, as we've talked, you know, the idea of doing a narrative painting or a multi-figured piece where you're not going to get everybody in the room and so on, which has always been a challenge for the Impressionist, of course, and we have our ways of handling it, but they might be considered somewhat clumsy compared to what's a natural flow for how you think and see nature. It's just a continuous, seamless fact. But then there's, you know, there's pros and cons for both. And so really, what you want in your final product should be in your control with the options you can have versus, well, this is how I paint it, so this is how it's going to be.
Yeah. No. So one of the advantages to this format, being that it's live and we have an audience tuning in, we're just excited to take some questions and hear from people. I have questions for both of us, but I'll start with questions for you, Jeff. I think that that's most appropriate. So from Eric, he says, how would you compare or contrast form versus Impressionist art making for someone that is unfamiliar with the difference? So that.
Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about that, trying to consolidate it down, but I think you said it best. How was that? You said that we're both trying to create an illusion. We're working with a three-dimensional world in a full spectrum of light, and we're trying to put it on a two-dimensional surface using very limited means of pigments. And you guys approach the problem through an understanding and recreation of form, of trying to recreate the world form-based. We're trying to more recreate the world through the puzzle pictures and pixels of what hits our eye that our brain interprets. And either way can do that, but it really comes down to how we dissect the world. And what do you think? I mean,
how would you compare and contrast? I mean, we kind of touched on it briefly, just discussing a little bit about our working methods, but to me it just still stands out from my experience in Minnesota, and the idea of, I think the lesser form of understanding what you're after is this idea of just copying one for one. I think what I learned this week was that you're so contextual with relating everything. They call it the big look. I mean, they throw it around a lot, but I think to really get it and to understand like how the saturation, the values, and everything in your picture sets up to then represent that, the image that you're looking at. And in New York, my influence from Jacob Collins and that school is it's really it's based on kind of a sensation of recreating space through just a understanding of what's happening. They're both highly nuanced things, I think, if you do them well, and they can both be mannerisms if they're done bad. So
yeah, it's a good way to say it.
So I think it's just, when I think of the naturalist painters, like today when I was painting and just playing around, I was thinking of Danyang Bouveret and how there was a period in the late 19th century into the early 20th century where it was just a blending. They came from a form culture, but they were so enthusiastic and impressed by this idea of going outside, opening up their palette, getting synthetic colors on their palette, and allowing that good drawing and good form sense to then be kind of explode into a new world of color, and then have that. And then Monet kind of took it to its extreme, and then it just kind of kept going.
Yeah.
The philosophy was taken all the way kind of to the brink of.
Yeah, he took one nuanced aspect of it and pushed it to its, I think, its final point. But that really was a side branch, and of course did some beautiful work. But it was very specific to one aspect of the entire art world, and also just kind of created when people think Impressionists, they think Monet, and you know, Vermeer and Velázquez were Impressionists of sort. And so with our school, we're trying to, you know, in our way of trying to describe what we do, I've just been calling it classical Impressionism. So it's it is an optical based way of approaching painting, and I guess what we're trying to do is create an atmosphere that has form in it. And I don't know how you would maybe counter that, how you would describe what you do is creating form that has an atmosphere. You know, it's a subtle difference, and like you say, done well, I think they do contain both, but because of the interest of the artist, you're going to have, or let me back up, if you know, you get 10 artists looking at the same subject, each one's going to see something different and beautiful, and we'll end up with 10 different canvases. And so really, it comes down to the artist attaching themselves to the training that will best fit their personality and their interests.
Yeah. Absolutely. I tell the students in the workshop that every artist throughout history has used a different arrangement of colors and different brushes. And so it's really a very unique kind of aspect to what we do. Message from Soylent McCrary. I hope I'm saying that right. She says, "Hi Jeffrey, I love your use of warm and cool colors, particularly the blues and yellow golds, and the overall luminosity in your work. Could you talk about your thoughts behind your color choices and your palette? Thanks, Soylent."
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you know, I was joking during our tape that I do really a big believer in limited palette. My limited palette has probably 28 colors on it. So what I'm trying to do is work using the limitations of paint, but to its fullest ability to translate the full spectrum of light, which we're not even close. Our whitest white, for an example, is nothing compared to a highlight on a glass, let alone the sun or a light. So you're always kind of attaching light to a pigment and then trying to recreate the meaning of what that light says and does. And there's just so many multiple ways you can do that through pigments where, you know, if you have a red note, that's a bright note. You put it against an orange background, it's not as bright. You put it against a green background, it's very bright. There's just so many ways you play with that, and it's not that I have those memorized or I think this is how I'm going to do that and I intellectually work through some color chart. I just have trained myself to see that in a way, and I've made a lot of mistakes in how not to do it, and in doing so I've learned how to do it, and each year a little better, I hope, and so I just find that maybe if I'm trying to translate from one language to another, I'm getting better with my word choice to express the meaning of what that language says.
That's great. Another message, question from William Galvez from California. He says, "Hi Jeff, it looks like you paint from life. Do you ever paint from photographs? And if you do, what kind of lighting do you use to photograph the setups? And what made you select mostly the still life genre over landscapes or portraiture?"
Okay, so I love painting from life. I don't enjoy painting from photos much. In the last 5 years or so, I've been working on a series of commissions with a group of artists that we're doing the history of the 20th century for a museum down in Texas, which has of course forced me to work from photographs as we're doing historical figures. But I will, I'll hire models. All the hands, all the figures were painted from life. I try to bring as much reality into the work so that when I do recreate the head from photography, there's hopefully a ring some truth in it. The photographs, I guess I don't purposely go out and take photos. If I've had to do a reference shot because of for a portrait commission, I kind of tend to just stick with black and white, kind of nothing special. In fact, the more information kind of throws me off. I want just kind of the basic drawing or the basic gesture and expression. But the color and all that I'm going to work up on my own understanding of how to recreate a flesh tones, say, or I'll use another portrait that I've done to mimic. There was a second part to the question.
It was the genre of still life and landscape and portraiture. You actually do a lot of both of those.
Yeah,
landscape.
It's primarily inspired by living in northern Wisconsin, where landscapes aren't as fun in January, and you have a long time in your studio, and I play the two off of each other in a sense because I enjoy both. And when you're outside painting the outdoor figure and landscapes, my typical summer day is, get up at sunrise and I have a painting, say, from 7 till 8:30, and then from 8:45 to 9:15 I have another one, and I just kind of follow the sun, the slots, because it moves, it changes, your motif changes, and so by the end of summer you're pretty worn out, and so to go into the studios is kind of nice and relaxing, and then I can where I wasn't able to spend much time in composition, say, and take long times to make decisions with my outdoor work, indoors I can, and I can spend as long as I want to set up a still life and draw it out very carefully. And where the two played off of each other was that in the summers when I'd come back out from spending all my time doing still lifes and such, my decision making for composition was better, my drawing was better, my ability to see warms and cools and subtleties. On the other hand, when I'd go back in the studio at the end of summer, my color notes were better. I'd make quicker decisions. I wouldn't let the fact that I could look at a still life all for days, weeks, months. I would I'd get in there and just focus. So the two for me have really played off of each other, building strength, I think. So, and I've just learned to love both.
That's great. Yeah, that's really inspiring to see how it's, over the years, it's influenced you, just pulling the color into the studio from the plein air stuff. This next question is from Gabriel Brown. He's from Argentina.
Oh, wonderful.
So he says he's enjoying the live streams, and he says, what advice would you give people who want to become artists in a professional way, but also want to have a parallel career? He's a med student. Thanks for the beautiful live stream and for giving us, people all over the world, the chance to catch a glimpse of the new atelier movement in the States. So, see, it's still new. It's revival. It's still new.
There you go. That's it. That's what we want. And that's a tough question. I mean, in the end, you need to enjoy this. I mean, I enjoy this. I love painting. I like it more now than I did when I started. And because of that, I've been blessed where I can just pour all my time into it. I've been able to make a living for it, and so for me, I wouldn't do anything else. He has another calling in the medical field also, which is very demanding. And so, I guess my first thought was, pick one that's your focus, and then the other which you really enjoy, and just like anything, try to, the better you get, the more you enjoy it, I think. And I actually, when I think about it, there's quite a few people in the medical profession mid-career that start really not jumping over, but spending more and more time training. And I know of several individuals that are really excellent artists. I think their field allowed them then to retire somewhat early or to take more time off, and then put that same intelligent focus that they put in their first career, catching up, if you want to say. What do you think? I mean,
well, I definitely think that the world needs smarter, more gifted artists who pursue the craft in a real way. So I would say, just thinking about like Da Vinci and how much he influenced the world, and so by all means, I would say try to. I know it's difficult because
maybe you should just forget the medical career. That's kind of a waste. I mean,
but in Argentina though, they don't.
They need some doctors.
It would be tough.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it would just, they don't buy fine art like they do in Europe or in the States, or they would rather buy a car or big TV or something. So
he might have the best of both worlds if he's able to balance and structure and be disciplined to work both careers up in a sense. So I just you don't quit. That's my baseline answer to everything. You just set your goals and you just never quit.
So another question from Amy she doesn't say where she's from. She said, so many questions. Will you be offering a workshop soon? The instructional video we've covered, and what surface do you paint on?
If it's 12 or 16 or smaller, I like to work on a panel. I usually prepare my own die bond aluminum panels. Anything larger than that, I just love the feel of canvas. I work with primarily Larson's 13 double primed, I think it is, and for the larger pieces I go to their number 15 double primed. It's a thicker, heavier weave. The workshops, I just finished one this last month. If you go to Great Lakes Academy of Fine Art, the website, we'll be posting as the summer progresses our fall workshop schedule, so that'd be wonderful if you could take that. And the educational tape was really pretty much everything I knew about how I paint, to be honest. How I do my most finished, elaborate still lifes and how I do my boldest outdoor figures, they both start the same, and I just stop at a different point depending on my focus. So to be honest, that would be a really good introduction into what I do. I think I think it went really well.
It was a little still life of some
smoked herring and a silver bucket, and I tried to set up something really challenging for pigments and to show you how I break it down. And like I say, I really have one methodology that I go at based on my training, my experience, everything else.
Excellent. Yeah. So the video for everybody, it will be available most likely in the summer. So just visit eastoakstudio.com and you'll be able to check it out. So we have quite a few questions. I don't think we're going to be able to hit all of them, but we'll definitely...
we'll shorten the answers up.
All right, yeah. Our producer, Joe, is cracking the whip. Could you talk, this is from Chris Walker, could you talk a bit about the use, we've talked about that, warm and cool colors. So.
Yeah, warm and cool colors. I mean, they're just part of the world that we see. There's warm colors and cool, and they're all relative to each other. So in a way, from our perspective especially, it's not that we don't train our brain, but we really use our brain, the intelligence of our brain, to analyze what we see and break the world into the nuance of puzzle pieces or pixels or whatever you want to refer to. And so there's the warms and cools are just two sides of the same coin of the hues of nature.
They're asking, Paul Molnar asked about color harmony. Can you elaborate on color harmony as referenced in your workshops? Insight from one or both of you would be great. Thanks, guys. So another conversation we've been having in great length.
Yeah, you know, everything we do, when I'm painting from nature, I'm by no means copying what I see or just a slave to nature. But I do feel like I really want to see and understand nature as it is, so that from hopefully my more honest evaluation, I can pick and choose what I want, edit it down to heighten whatever it was I saw that I found beautiful, or what it is I want to say on my canvas. And so a balance of warm and cools is an artistic decision, a sensibility we develop, but it is also in nature. It just, you know, the flesh goes from warm and cool, shadows go from warm and cool. It's just part of the beauty. And whether we set it up in a more, you know, artificial way like they did in Dutch Holland, you know, with just warms and cools and that subtle balance, or we're just painting what we see and achieve it through that. I think it's just, again, part of the artistry and the, what's your take?
Yeah, I have a pretty kind of systematic approach to how I deal with color. And so in the workshop, it kind of goes through this idea of having the three primary colors in their least saturated state. And I see that kind of permeate through nature quite a bit, but what I realize is it's kind of often a go-to for me. And what I'm thinking about when I do that is basically I'm moving from the desaturated yellow, just take yellows for example, maybe raw umber, and then as I move up in and I get lighter and more chromatic, raw umber, then raw sienna, and depending on how you manipulate raw sienna, if you spread it out over the canvas, then it gets brighter and more chromatic, and then raw sienna into cad yellow pale, then so it's this idea of going from the center of this color sphere and then back way out to the chroma. So early on in your demonstration, you established light and dark and these color points. And so for me in my setup, what I was talking about this week and what I kind of think about is that nature has all the answers. And that's always the calibrate. I'm always calibrating off of that. And if I can understand the palette scientifically, from the sense that, well, this is how light works. So then if light works this way, I'll be responding back and forth and going from desaturated to super saturated chroma, intense colors. So
it seems like, from what I'm watching yours, that you really want to understand why something happens. And I'm not as concerned about that as much as I want to really know that I see what's happening and know what to attach to it when I look down at my palette. So when I mix colors, you know, obviously red or yellow and blue make green. I probably am not thinking that as much as, well, what I see there's some of this and some of that, and I mix it till it's correct. And I'm very, very conscious and spend a lot of my time really trying to, here's my lightest light, darkest dark, most yellow, bluest blue, greenest green, and I set my boundaries, and then I start breaking them down from there But again, it's primarily optical based. If you ask me a lot of questions, what happens if you do this and that, I'm sure I could answer them. But that's not my primary go-to for how I work my way through through it. I don't understand first, I see, and then I guess maybe understand later.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's you know, it's super fun to watch.
But we've had more fun talking about completely different ways of going at the same problem with, you know, hopefully really both really good results. It just,
absolutely.
It's the first of many conversations.
So Gail asked about the school, potentially interested student. She says, can you elaborate more about your school as to each year, what is covered, and the name of the school again? So
it's Great Lakes Academy of Fine Art. We're in Duluth, Minnesota. It's very, very similar in structure what, you know, through the ateliers I trained in, and I guess going back to the 19th century, we were all doing variations of a theme, but, you know, it's, while we would do cast work and barred Jerome plates and work our way up from simple to difficult, you know, the focus is always, from our standpoint, training your eye to see line and shapes, proportions, learn to see values, learn to see edges, learning to see color intensities, you know, the craft of painting, composition. We work our way through it. So 4-year program, the first 2 years are primarily in black and white. I think that's a foundation for all great art. And then now we just, as the 3rd-year students are beginning, we're introducing color. Still lifes, you know, we're very conscientious, I guess, not that other schools aren't, but that when you do a cast, when you do a still life, whatever, you want to do your best, of course, but it's a means to an end to train your eye. And so we don't want to train people that are really just phenomenal at casts or figures, and they don't know how to use that knowledge to anything beyond that. And so we tend to really hit the problem over and over again until you get really adept at the foundations, and then as you get in your 3rd and 4th year, then the refinement will be added to it, I think, is what we're structuring it as. There'll be a very high proportion of learning just to see color, to see values, to dissect nature. It's we have a lot going on.
Right. Yeah. I've seen some of the studies of just the way they're thinking about color and light, and it's really fascinating. They have basically Christmas ornaments so that the students don't get too attached to the painting itself, right?
No one really wants to hang them on the wall when they're done.
So then you'd have a solid one, glass, and then just a metallic one, but then like a red metallic.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll elaborate real quickly. It takes just a swing of the compass to draw it, and we start with just a white wooden ball, and where the highest white is titanium white. So you could basically mix each color directly off the ball and paint it. The second one we add to it then is a glass ball. And in that, the highlight is way beyond titanium white, so that we have to then hit that and start painting. Instead of from direct observation, we're keying relationships, and then we paint both balls. So that the white ball, which was correct directly, is now too light if you want to have the reflection pop out. So we have to repaint that in relationship. Then we add a chrome ball, which is primarily just black and white, and seems so difficult to paint. But if you get your keying correct and the values and the edges, suddenly there's the illusion of a chrome ball. And then we add the colored ball, which now you're working with color intensities to heighten the illusion of created through just values. Now you're doing values and chroma. And it ends up being a really interesting project that the students can kind of see how this all works together, and how one builds on the other.
That's great. So we're getting, I want to keep it short and sweet. We've been going about a half hour, but I want to address Carlo Russo, a good friend of ours who's done a production with us. He has a couple of questions, so I want to be sure to have the opportunity to ask you. So he says, how do you plan out your paintings? Do you compose them? Do you do color studies? Do you use a viewfinder? Or Or do you just move things around until you like what you see? Is there a common thread or a current that runs through your work?
You know, I use all of those. You know, if you're outside landscape painting, doing figure pieces, that's where I probably start, is with the viewfinder, even with the still life. But I really, especially on the more elaborate pieces, or pieces that I know I'm going to spend a lot of time on, I start with thumbnails. I'll do a number of studies. I'll do little color studies. I'll break it down through, you know, even doing more formal composition breakdowns and golden sections and so on. I hate to, I've done enough paintings where I've been halfway, 2/3 through them, where I realize I should have put this over here and this should move up. So I really think it through beforehand. My idea of composition has just grown from 35 years of, well, beginning with formal study, but just analyzing the masters, just seeing what I like, wondering why do I like that, and just really trying to glean something from everybody. Looking at work I don't like and wondering why don't I like it. It just slowly building up, I guess, an aesthetic of what I tend to lean towards. But it's just it's a never-ending quest for that composition that just sings and is married to the subject matter.
That's great. Well, we hope that you all have enjoyed this. We're, as we say, we just had a blast this week talking about stuff, so we wanted to do this so that we could invite you all into the conversation and hear your thoughts. One thing I'd like to mention, you know, Jeffrey mentioned that he may have a workshop in the fall here. We have some future ideas about some painting demos that we were thinking about doing together as a live stream, so we could talk about these processes and techniques as we're painting. I want to just give a shout out to Rosemary and Company. I have a workshop coming up at the end of the month, so if anyone is over in England, or if they see this and are interested in coming to the workshop, I'll be over there, so check out the website. And we'd also like to mention that until June 15th, we have Teresa Owaka's Drawing the Portrait DVD or download on sale, so definitely check it out. And until our next live stream, so signing off.